we are all going to end up on a GS. Yes, maybe. But on which one, you ask? It's not as simple anymore. And let's talk about when it's time to move to R1250GS or when you should go with F850GS or even switch to it from the big R1200 or R1250GS. I am Witold and let me make all this straight for you guys. Let's now focus on the differences between the two, as there's plenty of them and they are huge. Probably these bikes differ more than most people would think after seeing them next to each other and after learning that they are both from the same GS family. And yes, they are both enduro motorcycles up to some point. One could say that they are touring enduros, but I don't really agree that we can say that about both of them. If you like to ride with a passenger and prefer to choose faster roads, I mean, having a bit of fun when doing so, when accelerating and getting that thrill when riding on a tarmac, I would say forget about F850GS. It's just a little bit too weak to give you all that. It's a little bit too weak for me when riding solo, so if you are planning some trips with a passenger and want those trips to be exciting in terms of performance, I would say don't necessarily go with 850. Now let me rephrase it to eliminate any confusion. I mean a case where you enjoy and want that adrenaline when rolling throttle wide open. I know I do, and F850GS is not for that. If you don't care about that and just want to ride with a passenger here or there, or simply not exceed 130 to 140 kilometers per hour, the 850 will do it. Yeah, sure. But still, the big R1250GS will do it better, more quickly, without such an effort, and giving you plenty of margin to quickly speed up if you need to. And also, it is much more flexible, much more, with over 40% more power and over 55% more torque. So 95 horsepower of the medium GS versus 136 horsepower of the big one, and 92 Newton meters of torque versus 143 Newton meters of torque. R1250GS destroys F850GS in terms of performance, and this is enhanced even more when riding with a passenger. Believe me that this matters. However, it matters only if you care. Tricky one. Another point is that the bigger GS is just more stable at high speeds, and this lets you stay more confident and more relaxed when riding with additional weight high on top of the bike. Bottom line, if you are about to ride a lot with a passenger, I do recommend going for the bigger, more stable and more powerful R1250GS. And there's also this feeling of security and safety while on a bigger bike while carrying a passenger. To me that helps. I wouldn't probably enjoy it that much having especially a bigger passenger on a smaller bike. That's not the case. Let's move that aside. Let's now look at what happens when you don't care about all that, and what you are really interested in is being able to go off the road and play in the sand or some forest trails, fields or muddy situations, or wherever else you might want to go where it's not flat and the surface may be loose. Actually, how many of you guys are into that, I wonder? Please let me know in the comments. Both of these bikes may and likely will handle those places and situations as well, but we'll do it in a different fashion. The 1250 is feeling a little bit heavier at very low speeds simply because it is 26 kilograms heavier with fuel included than the 850. It will require more of your muscle power when you're trying to save it from falling, for example, which will that's what off-roading is about. You're just trying to go and not fall. So your body weight will also, remember that it will have less impact on the bike since the bike weighs more. The big one weighs more. And weight is your enemy when off-roading. Also, front telelever suspension in the R1250GS may be your enemy as well if you have to ride over sandy terrains. An enemy may be a slight exaggeration, but in some of such cases, the conventional upside-down front suspension does just a better job at making the bike ride over certain soft obstacles. Telelever prevents front suspension from diving, and that's fantastic and it really works. But at the same time, it wants to make the front wheel of the big GS go somehow through a pile of sand instead of over it. The 850 may be doing it better here then. Now let's just compare two more things that matter when off-roading. They do matter a lot actually, or actually three things. First, ground clearance, then wheels travel, and front wheel size. And the first comparison will totally kill it actually. Ground clearance of R1250GS is 18.5 centimeters, which is 7.3 inches. The ground clearance of the 2021 F850GS is, wait for it, 25 centimeters or 9.8 inches. I couldn't believe when I saw this number, because that's over 35% more, and I guess we wouldn't even need to go further to decide which one was designed to go off the road as a priority, or do we? Well, because I'm not sure actually I should believe all that, is this may just as well be data for the adventure version. Now let me just mention where this confusion is coming from. It's coming from the absolutely rubbish BMW Motorrad official website, and websites actually in different languages. Because just for fun, I started comparing also the front wheel travel, which is 19 centimeters for the 1250 and 23 for 850. And this got me stunned. And I checked on the local website, then on the, let's call it original German website, and then the information is the same with 23 centimeters of front wheel travel for the regular F850GS. That's a monster, I thought, but damn, it really didn't feel that much. And then I checked the English website, and there it says 20.4 centimeters of front wheel travel for the 850. So BMW, please fix this. The websites, the information and social media posts on Facebook of BMW Motorrad International, because they are rubbish and full of mistakes like those. Figuring this out in the end is a hell of a process. So please, BMW, just change your agency, because I'm suspecting this to be run by some external agency and people who have no idea what they're talking about. It's not actually possible to get to certain information. Let's stick to the information that rear wheel travel is 20 centimeters for the big one, the 1250GS, and 21.5 or 21.9 centimeters for the 850. The little difference between 1250 and 850 is one of the reasons why 1250 isn't dealing worse with bumps than the regular 850 when it comes to riding on the road. As for the bumps and comfort, the big one, the 1250, somehow actually manages to be a bit more comfortable still. This may be related to its higher mass and just differently set suspension. Don't get me wrong, the 850 isn't bad. It's actually very good, just not as good. Now, the absolute king of comfort and flying over bumps was the adventure version of F850GS, the previous one. And that thing just rocked it. With all the confusion over the data and me not riding the newest F850GS in an adventure version, I cannot confirm if it's just as good or perhaps even better than the previous one. In both cases, even the current F850GS Adventure may be killing it if it's just as good as the previous one in terms of just soaking up the bumps. I'll tell you about my speculations once BMW fixes their official information once and for all, which I don't believe will happen. Another thing to consider when choosing between those two bikes, the 850GS and the 1250GS, is your height. This is because the 1250's lowest seat height is 85 centimeters, and it can be changed to higher. It can be lifted, raised to 87 centimeters, while the F850GS has its seat 1 centimeter higher than the default position in the big one, and it has it at 86 centimeters, so 85 versus 86. Still, this is not a big deal, as you may always replace the seat with a lower or higher. You can even lower the whole bikes, both of them. However, it is good to know what to expect once you sit on both of them at the dealership and wonder why they may feel slightly differently because of the differences in heights. 1250 is lower than 850. Yeah, but that's actually not the most important, because the width of the seat matters too. And despite another mistake on some BMW official websites where they copied the data of R1250GS Adventure and pasted them as relevant to the regular 1250. The 1250 has a smaller, shorter inner leg curve, or they also call it rider step, than the 850. This data takes into account how much your legs spread to the sides because of the seat and what the total length is needed to touch the ground. In the end, it should be easier for you to reach the ground with your feet on a bigger GS. So the 1250 with its 187 centimeters of this inner leg thingy versus 191 centimeters of 850. The smaller the number, the easier for you to touch the ground when sitting. So shame on you, BMW. Shame for all that confusion and mistakes and wrong data. But maybe we can forgive them because build quality of both GSs seems identical and both are brilliant. Everything works smoothly here and predictably. Buttons and switches are sturdy and give a solid feel. They are the same on both bikes as far as I'm concerned, and that's why. However, the 850 that I was riding had a clutch lever that was producing some clicking, not even sound, but it would click mechanically. I could feel it in my hand when I was pulling the clutch. And it also seemed quite loose, and I didn't like that. Well, I don't think it should be like this. It was the only place that wasn't making a perfectly good impression, and unfortunately, a one that's constantly used, almost, because there was a quick shifter in this bike. So I didn't actually have to use clutch most of the time if I didn't want to, but I anyway was doing that. Still, the feeling of quality is really good overall on both of these bikes. If you're looking for range, then the big GS always has a bigger fuel tank, and it's either 20 or 30 liters for the regular or Adventure, while the 850 has only 15 or 23 liters of fuel in the tank accordingly, so the regular and Adventure. Maybe it does consume a little bit less fuel because of a weaker engine and lower weight, but I'm convinced that it will not make up for so much larger tanks in both variants of 1250 GSs. Now, another thing that may make you want to go for the bigger brother is wind protection. On the 850, it isn't really there. There aren't any annoying turbulences around the helmet, regardless of the position of the windshield, but it's not really protecting you that much. Not as much as the 1250 with its larger and taller windshield. It's just better. Both windshields are manually adjustable on the fly. You can do it when you're riding, no problem, with one hand. Also, the cylinders that stick out to the sides and a wider body, the fairings, they cover you better in the lower area when you're riding the 1250 GS. It's worth knowing, even though this may not be a deal breaker. But this next one, maybe, because it's about a human size, the rider's size, so your size. R1250GS, despite being shorter with the seat in its lowest setting, its handlebar seems to be wider as the whole bike is actually over 3 centimeters wider. It seems like not much when looking at the digit, 3 centimeters only, but you definitely feel it. They both are perfect for my size and for my taste also in terms of width of handlebar. I'm 1 meter 83 centimeters tall, and I'm not having a specifically short or long arms or specifically short or long legs or torso and so on. So I guess I am a pretty good representation of a, let's say, an average rider. But I'm sometimes struggling when having to turn the wheel fully to the left or right on the 1250, as I would really have to have much longer arms to comfortably reach that far forward with the handlebar just moving to its extreme positions. And this makes me stretch a lot, and it also makes me feel that I give away some feeling of control over the bike because I'm at my extreme positions as well. So if something goes wrong, I'm out, I'm down. I cannot hold it leaning that far forward. Also, I think it influences the feeling of control of the throttle and the brake lever or the clutch. Go make sure that you can handle it. This and the sound of the Boxer engine are perhaps actually the worst parts of the 1250 GS for me, myself personally. These would be the two things that I would complain the most about. So I guess it's not that bad. 1250 doesn't sound much better in terms of engine and exhaust sound, if at all better. It's less farty, but also doesn't produce as deep sounding farts as the 1250. If you are a shorter human with shorter legs, the 1250 may be more friendly for you. That's what I wanted to say here. Now, if you're a human with shorter arms and shorter torso, the F850GS will be more friendly for you. I know this may be a little bit confusing, so think about it in this way. Do you prefer to struggle with the bike size when setting off, when stopping, and supporting yourself with your legs while on a bike? Or do you prefer to struggle, or would you rather struggle when making tight turns, extremely tight turns, and having to spread your arms really a lot all the time when riding? It's a matter of your preference. Now, here's one of the deal breakers for the F850GS, and that's everyday comfort of use / maintenance. This is about drivetrain. 850 is propelled by a chain which you need to lubricate every few hundred kilometers, clean it, tighten it, and replace from time to time, and pay for that. While the 1250 has a drive shaft, which you don't have to do anything with, generally, because at some point you might want to replace oil in it, for example. But there is no stopping to spray it like with the chain. There is no mess in that area of the motorbike, and there is no bloody spray that you need to carry with yourself on every trip. The big GS wins here, and I know many people, including myself, love it this way. There are automated lubrication systems, however, and they do reduce the maintenance, but they do increase the mess. And you have to install such devices yourselves. In terms of suspension comfort, I have to give it to the R1250GS. It's just tuned slightly more nicely than the regular F850GS. It is more stable and more composed, and additional weight of the bike may make it feel as more confident handling those bumps. Another thing is balancing, and while F850GS is really nice, it's really neutral and easy to handle both at low and higher speeds, it's the 1250 that is an absolute master of this category due to its low center of gravity, thanks to those cylinders sticking out and carrying all that weight so low, and thanks also to telelever front suspension that prevents diving and makes the big GS ride just like a train, basically. In curves, it just goes where you point. Its neutrality is just amazing, and it's just a king here. Now, what about the fun? We often ride purely for fun, so what about this factor? And this is a tough one here that depends on if you define fun by handling the bike effortlessly and having a feeling of dealing with it with ease because it feels so light, or whether fun is a combination of great balance and staying totally neutral in any situation along with great performance. If it's the first variant, the 850 is the way to go for you. If the second, then 1250 should be your choice. In terms of equipment, it's generally the same in fact, which may surprise many of you considering the difference in classes of these bikes and their price tags. I believe it only tells us a lot of good things about how BMW perceive their 850 and their will to give their clients a possibility to get anything they may need with the 850 and not limit them here. And of course, there are some differences like heated seats in the 1250, drive shaft instead of a chain, availability of cornering LED lights, for example. The rest is pretty much the same, even including the digital screen. I'm just not sure if 850 can have hill start assist or not, as the 1250 has it. Thanks to BMW's information, it's impossible to tell. However, it is not listed for 850 wherever I was checking, on the official websites, I believe. If you guys can confirm that, then please do, as I haven't had a chance to try and I completely forgot about doing it during all that time. Now, please let me move to the perhaps most important part and a big difference. It's the image. It's the name and it's the mental feeling. There are contrasting opinions on what image R1250GS actually has. Some say it has a bad name, which I don't understand really, and this I've been hearing from some colleagues from the UK and UK only so far, and I believe that it has a very good name. I mean, at least in my eyes, it has a very good name. Because look, why would so many people put their money into the biggest and baddest GS otherwise? Maybe it's sometimes done just because they can, but still, it may only prove the general perception of it being one of the best and most desired motorcycles. There's nothing above it kind of thought. And I agree that it may be seen this way, and if you like the feeling of having the top of the line thing in its category, the GS's image will satisfy you, the big GS's image will satisfy you. The 850 may not necessarily do it. There's this legend, you know, running along the Boxer engine and famous movies of famous people riding around the world on Boxer-powered GS bikes. And to some that may be cool, that may be appealing. So if you want the name to impress, then it's the 1250, not the 850. But if you want to stay slightly different and not go with the most popular choice, the 850 will do, as it's a more rare motorcycle to see on the streets, despite being even cheaper. Oh, by the way, prices. 12,000 euros for the base 850 and 16,500 euros for a base 1250. But nobody buys them in a base specification. Going further, the differences between the two in prices, they only increase. But you don't have to buy them new, and a few years old 1250 may be there in the price of a new 850 at some point. So let me know what your situation here is, and if this video helped you, then give it a thumb up and stay tuned for the upcoming video and subscribe so that I can see you soon. Cheers!